slide and get your lick back. And get your lick back. Get your lick back. If a nigga owe you something, ain't no chit chat. Better stay up out the way, don't get your dish splat. Stop letting this shit slide and get your lick back. And get your lick back. I feel like I'm JX. J-Way. I'm a perfectionist. Adderall got me restless. I'm gone. Run with a wild crew, they get reckless. Young boy, come up off that neck. Give me that. To the trends. See a lead, be the band.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Corner to Cope. I'm here with my co-host, Coach. How you feeling today?
Oh, just fasting for the big day tomorrow.
Absolutely. We are well into the free agency period. Things are heating up just a little bit, not too much for the Tigers, but the first big bomb was dropped of the Major League free agent season. We will get to that eventually, but the Tigers did make a few moves internally. We got a few agreements on deals of some players that are avoiding arbitration. If you're watching live on the visual side of things, they're pictured. Andy Ibanez and Zach Mckinstry have agreed to deals at around $1 million. And these were deals that were extended by the organization, like tender contracts. But what are your thoughts? I'm going to start with you as far as just your thoughts on bringing Zach Mckinstry and Andy Ibanez back.
I mean, despite what they're paying him, which was about double of what the minimum was last year, what round they were making, $750,000, $800,000 or so. I mean, for their production, you're not going to find better value. Both what they bring defensively, they're both pretty sound, especially Zach. And what Andy did with the bat and just, was the kryptonite to that hand of pitchers last year, created a very interesting storyline for both these guys that stepped in and produced with big plays, big hits at clutch moments that all contributed to the streak and getting in. I mean, if you wanted to go out in the free agency market and try and find guys similar of age or time of service, you're probably talking in the neighborhood of $4 or $5 million on average for guys that are not in arbitration or team control. So it fits with their approach in terms of value contracts. Although these guys were under arbitration. So levels 4 through 6, they get to counter with the organization. And then if it needs to go to a hearing because neither can sign off on what the other side is proposing, then they go to the hearing adjudicator to rule for a final dollar amount. But overall, these are kind of what I had expected for the most part. Again, good value, and these guys are good locker room guys. So I think this is a win for the locker room, honestly.
Definitely. I feel like certainly their playoff play solidified their spots on the team. Zach Mckinstry, when you look at the numbers, although he had a much reduced role into this year as far as the starting role, he had kind of a down year in comparison to last year, which was his first kind of full season of action. But he did come in clutch. Well, first of all, he played a number of positions. He came in clutch with a lot of big hits. Although overall his statistics weren't great the entire year, he was somebody that was pivotal down the stretch. As far as Andy Ibanez, I mean, he had one of the bigger hits of the entire season in that Houston Astros series. He was tough against lefties throughout the year, but even he struggled towards the tail end of the season. He only hit, I believe, 167 the last 30 days of action, albeit, he wasn't starting games. This is a lot in a pinch hit role, but down the stretch, he didn't have a great year of hitting, but he did have a strong June. Actually, the first half of the year, he was pretty good. That second half was not great. So where I think that I think that they're in a way kind of recycling the energy and momentum we had last year. I think there was definitely some opportunities for us to upgrade at that position if we had chose to spend a little bit more money. So I think these guys may be on shorter leashes. I mean, I certainly thought that McKinstry, up until a certain point, might be on his way out of town if it wasn't for the Baez situation and how much he struggled and how he ended up getting hurt. But um, I think these are guys that if push come to shove, they feel like they need to upgrade or they need to go a different direction. I don't think these guys are just locks to be on the roster for the entire year. But you know, big proprietor of Andy Ibanez, even going into the year, and Zach McKinstry certainly won me over with a lot of big plays on his end. Um, I think that this was a very Scott Harris move to hold on to these guys when you talk about the financial side of things. Um, but any other thoughts? Any other thoughts to that?
Not really. Of course, with those signings and those that are still pending from some guys that are in that class 4 through 6 range, there were a handful of players that were not tendered to the club. I'm not sure if you want to be the one to read those names out.
Yeah. So as far as I know, what was it? Just Wilmer Flores that got a non-tender agreement, or were there other guys that I missed on?
So, yeah, Wilmer Flores was one of them. There were 4 in total, just because they had to get under that 40-man number or get to that number that was previously over. It's just all carryover from the roster in the playoffs last year, and the fact that we did have to use every single call-up out of that 40-man group. Probably a little more action than most clubs regarding this, but Flores, Ricky Vanasco, the guy that we acquired mid-season separately, independently from the Jack Flaherty deal, we traded cash for him. I believe he was just an emergency fill-in for the minor league affiliates, just to have some depth going down the stretch. So he was a casualty along with Brendan White and Eddie's Leonard.
Right. And Eddie's Leonard is a guy that I want to say we picked up from the LA Dodgers. And he had some injuries early in the year. Actually, him and who was it? Kryler. I want to say Kryler and Leonard had some injuries going into the year. So Kryler was actually got a few opportunities um, to come back up to the major league team, but Eddie Leonard wasn't able to get. Just wasn't able to get going.
He missed a big chunk of time early, didn't he? When Joe got hurt, they both got hurt early in the year in May. I thought, Double A or High A, one of the two, and then Leonard was out what seemed like for almost 2 months. It seemed.
Yeah. So he was a guy that had some potential to. I think his primary position is shortstop, but he also plays some outfield as well. And I want to say he hit pretty well during spring training, but the injury definitely slowed him down some. So, yeah. But moving forward, the Rule 5 draft is coming up, and the Tigers protected a few guys from hitting that, from falling into that eligibility. Most notably, a couple players that we picked up in the Texas Rangers deal. Let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah, so we protected Chase Lee, Tyler Madison, and Tyler Owens. I want to say Chase Lee and Owens were guys that we picked up in that Rangers deal, and Tyler Madison is just a guy that we drafted in 2021. But we left guys like Justice Bigby, Gage Workman, Roberto Campos, and Joseph Montalvo available to the Rule 5 draft. Most notably, in my eyes, is Justice Bigby. Well, Gage Workman, he had a pretty good year last year as well, but Justice Bigby is just a year removed from a pretty good season where he jumped, I think, 3 different teams that year, but made it up to Erie and then had had an off year in AAA. So I could possibly see a team possibly making a move to pick up Justice Bigby, but obviously they'd have to put him on the 40-man roster for I think 60 days, I believe. So I don't know if they're willing to go that far, but that's what we got going as far as the Rule 5 draft. What's the next on the agenda?
We can kind of discuss how so far we've heard some of the comments over the last 4 weeks or so from Scott Harris, first immediately after the postseason elimination, and then a little bit earlier this month, beginning of the month, I believe, when the GMs had their November meetings prior to the owner meetings here coming up next month. We can go over what we think his approach is going to be to this offseason to the traditional free agency availability.
All right. Well, actually, I'm gonna start with a quote from Mr. Harris. This is kind of addressing his the free agency as far as pitchers are concerned. He said, if we can get the level of performance that Jack Flaherty produced for us in a 1-year deal, of course, we're interested in that. If we see opportunities to do that on a long-term deal that makes sense for us, we're open-minded to that too. I don't think we're just focused on one approach no matter what. We're going to try to be responsive to the market and what opportunities exist. So my interpretation is, well, for one, we have had success with short-term deals and basically kind of basically turning some pitchers' careers around and then ultimately trading them at the deadline and compiling prospects off of that. We were able to do that with Lorenzen, which turned into Hyu Lee. We did that. Well, we failed at doing that with Eduardo Rodriguez, which was obviously heavily publicized. But we were also able to do that for Jack Flaherty. We got really, really good production from him. He was a top 2 member of our rotation, and we were able to turn that around into Theron Lorenzo and Sweeney. So it looks like they will likely stick to a situation like that because that has been successful for us, not only on the production side of things, but also recycling that into younger prospects as well. But I think that as far as the long-term deal, I think he kind of just threw that out there just to, because he doesn't want to go all in on one approach. But what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, to the last part, he's saying what needs to be said, but he's been pretty adamant that, even last year, we're on the principle of value over spending, just to be a big market salary cap club. And honestly, like the signings of the Ibanez and Mckinstry and arbitration saves him potentially a couple $1 million on each guy. This offseason is going to be, I think, 50%. It's not our number just because we have 2 years left of team control with Scooble. But the signings we make this year and next year in combination, I believe, are what's going to dictate an extension from the owner and front office side with Tarek Scooble. So I would say I've had to lower my expectations from guaranteed 2 power bats. I mean, frankly, we do need 2, whether it's one this year, one next year, or both either year. It doesn't matter to me. We need corner infield bats that can produce power and drive in runs. So if he gets none of that and he gets a 1-year rental player on either or both, I mean, I'm personally myself, I'm going to be hot under the hat to start game 1 heading into next year, because I think it just starts to slowly erode the confidence that Skubal has that Chris Ilitch and Harris are legitimately trying to build a contender and not just some fluke one-off, team that, oh, we went to the playoffs twice in 3 years. We signed him and then we did nothing the way because we refused to pay anyone else. So we got to wait and see what he does this offseason, but I think that has that'll have a sizable impact on the approach that Skubal and his team will have at an extension.
Absolutely. And let's get to the first break. So some teams have been active in free agency thus far. The Angels have been extremely active. I mean, are they trying to? I know that Trout's coming back, and they're hoping that he's healthy for the first time in a while. But are they really trying to make a playoff push with some of the moves that they're making right now?
Well, they've had to get rid of some, they've been carrying some dead money. They still are. Unfortunately, with Anthony Rendon is just total dead weight right now. I mean, he's been pretty well documented, the abysmal year last year, his controversial quotes before he even played a game about his family and religion being before baseball. It's just a job. Some of the backlash and in support of that, but if Trout is going to continue playing seriously about, not just the next year or so, but hopefully the next, handful of years with that contract that he's got. I think the Angels they kind of understand, like, what, we screwed the pooch with Shohei when he was here. We need to do our due diligence as obviously a big market organization and ball club to go out, re-spend and try and revitalize this turnaround and not make it as long of a turnaround as, ironically, we look at, Detroit, how long it's taken since the days of Miggy and Verlander and Scherzer. And, this took years for us to get a lot of these contracts off the books. So I think they're trying to make a run at it. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs this coming year, but with the moves they're making, they are at least putting forth a genuine effort. I think that's pretty obvious to see. It's just a matter of whether those signings pan out. But yeah, they've made a few trades, as well as the Indians and Reds making a very interesting trade as well, back late over the last weekend as well.
All right, and we talked a little bit about some of the tender contracts being extended to players. Of course, the Tigers didn't have a ton of non-tender players, but were there? Did you get an opportunity to look at any notable players that the Tigers might be interested, as far as players that are not free agents and were not extended a tender agreement?
Yeah, there were some. Let's see here. Of course, we still have some of our own, but those are level 4 through 6 guys, and I fully expect most of those guys that were on that list to file for arbitration, just because the way their season progressed, some of these guys winning awards and certain personal record highs, their value at the end of the year is going to be probably more so outweigh what would have been this incoming year's market value average for them at their time of service. So I would expect guys like Skubal, Jake Rogers to go through that arbitration process, earn them a couple of more bucks, just a formality in that sense. That won't be finalized until after the new year, approximately the second week of January. But other guys that were not Not necessarily. There were some that were re-signed. I don't really have a list of guys that weren't, because a lot of them are. I went through them and kind of looked at them, but none of the names really popped out to me that were left off for the most part. I got some general signings. The Rockies stuck with Jacob Stallings for another year. Same with the White Sox of Austin Slater. Dodgers with Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin, both 1 year. Not surprised. Those are big arms in their rotation. And as we all know, the Dodgers last year were absolutely, like the Tigers, decimated with starting pitching injuries. Yankees brought back JT Brubaker, and I didn't think he had team control left, but Trent Grisham, the former Padre, longtime Padre, returns as well. The Yankees and the San Francisco Giants re-signed outfielder Mike Yastrzemski to 1 more year as part of his arbitration deal. There was some rumblings going on in San Francisco that he may actually been full-on waived and released with team control still left, given his tumultuous up and down year last year. But aside from that, those were the key guys that I had noted that did stay with their ball club heading into 2025.
All right, so I have a list of 3 players. None of these guys are like just 100%. I love everything about them, but I do have a few players that stuck out to me as possible candidates, mostly depth type guys, maybe even some guys that could have possibly been upgrades to a Andy Ibanez or Zach McKinstry. But the first guy on my list is John Birdie. This guy is a local guy, actually. He's originally from Troy, Michigan, but he played as a bench player for the Yankees last year. And when I look at his advanced analytics, there are a couple of things that jump out at me. One, he's a guy that will bring an immense amount of sprint speed. He plays third, corner outfield, quarter infield, third base. But he has a very high, granted in a small sample size, a very high expected batting average. He has elite play discipline as far as his chase rate and whiff rate. He's a high contact guy, that doesn't strike out a lot, and he is only 2 years removed from playing with the Marlins, where he had 41 stolen bases. The Tigers do have a group of aggressive base runners and some speedsters, but we don't steal a lot of bases. Even a guy like Verlander, who has a high sprint speed, doesn't utilize that a lot on base paths. Obviously, Parker Meadows does. But I do think that he could, John Birdie could bring an element. He doesn't have a massive pop in his bat, and it doesn't seem like he played a lot for the Yankees last year. He only had 66 at bat. So I don't know. I find it hard to believe he played a whole year on the major league staff and only had that much. But like I said, he's only a couple years removed from a Marlins season when he had 41 stolen bases. So I do like that. The Colorado Rockies non-tender Brendan Rodgers, who ended the year with 13 home runs. Granted, he was playing in Coors Field, and the vast majority of those home runs came in Coors Field. But he plays second base. So obviously he would be a depth infield guy, not very good defensively, but he had a hard hit percentage of in the 70 percentile. So he does have the ability to hit for some pop. I mean, obviously, when you're hitting the ball hard, that the hard hit rate is that proof to the court? Is that the fact that he plays in the elements of Coors Field, that wouldn't assist him, would it?
Well, from an offensive standpoint, yeah, the ball carries a hell of a lot farther. I mean, that's, we joke about it, but we look, that's the reason why.
Does it measure the bat off the speed off the bat? I mean, does that, with the altitude, affect that?
It's not so much when it comes off the pitcher's hand. I mean, to a degree, it will. But the fact that, obviously both teams are playing the same elements, it's kind of a wash because they both have to play in it. But it's really more so the impact when it carries the impact off the bat versus, being a throw out of the pitcher's hand. Not so much for a pitcher, absolutely more beneficial for the hitter. And if anything, it's purely a detriment to pitching.
Yeah, definitely. And then I have one more individual. He's a corner outfielder. He played for the Pirates last year, Brian De La Cruz. I want to say he might have got traded at the deadline, but I could be mistaken on that. Actually, I think he started the year with the Marlins and then got traded to the Pirates. That might be it. But this is a player that, as far as just adding some pop to our lineup, he hit 21 home runs last year, and yeah, he hit 21 home runs last year. So he definitely will provide some pop to the middle of the lineup for us. Outside of that, he is a guy that doesn't fit the Scott Harris mold of dominating the strike zone. He definitely chases a lot of pitches, strikes out a decent amount, and is not a very good defender. But he has a cannon for an arm. On the other side of things, he also did not have a great runners. Did not have good splits with runners in scoring position. Neither did Brendan Rodgers, which is part of my reservations for going to get these guys. I don't think we need anybody else that struggles with runners in scoring position. But I do like the appeal of having guys that hit the ball hard and have shown the ability to hit for power. I didn't dig too deep into the pitchers because there's just far too many pitchers to look into. But yeah, those were the list of the non-tender guys that Scott Harris might kick that Scott Harris might kick the tires on. But any other thoughts? Well, no. Well, we'll get right into it. Let's get right into it. No, let's take a break. And we'll come back and talk more free agency.
You got the
All right, we've had our first major. We've had a couple semi big free agency acquisitions as far as pitchers is concerned. But Blake Snell has agreed to a deal with the LA Dodgers today. Yes, the Dodgers, of course, make the first gigantic move. But how do you feel this is going to affect how everybody else moves? Do you expect to see a lot of moves made now that the first big move has been secured?
So yeah, we'll kind of set the stage here. There were a lot of low-level flurry of moves in the first 2.5 weeks from the end of the postseason, and then to Foster's point earlier, he alluded to the trade the Cubs and the Angels made. Cubs trading for catcher Matt Thaiss for cash considerations a week ago, and then the Kansas City Royals acquiring Jonathan India and outfielder Joey Weimer from the Reds for starting right-hand pitcher Brady Singer, who had his ups and downs. The organization was a fairly decent pitcher, but Reds looking to add some arm depth to the rotation, and with the acquisitions that the Royals made at the trade deadline, getting some veteran playoff guys to help fill some of their dinged up younger court they had heading into the playoffs that was in need of them. So the first signing of any significance really was a few days ago with the Angels signing free agent Kikuchi, who was traded from Toronto to Houston at the deadline. That was a team and player that Detroit was fans were up in arms about, given the return that Toronto got for him. A lot of people thinking that's what Flaherty should have been, the return for. Instead, we got what we did from the Dodgers. Not going to go down that road because so far, at least based on the late summer, early fall video and stats we've seen, I think we're coming out on the plus side of that, and they won their World Series. So, for now, we'll call it a win-win. But Blake Snell, 5 years, $182 million, $36.4 million annual average with $52 million signing bonus. And the interesting thing, but it's probably due to his age, there are no opt-outs either way from either party in that contract. So it looks like he'll probably end up, I would say, most likely retiring as a Dodger. But now we've got a market value set for a top starting pitcher in the market. So I expect to see more deals kind of trickle in. They may not all be at once, at least for the starting pitcher side. So now we'll see what happens with anyone that's available from the right-handed side. And we'll start to hear conversations of negotiations really start to pick up. I know we've heard some things already with Soto going around, that he's had meetings already with a couple different organizations. We've heard, what Bregman may be wanting if he leaves Houston. Boris allegedly stating he's looking to get $35 million a year, which if he wants 10 years, that's 10,350. Unfortunately, I think that prices us out for sure, considering his market value heading into the offseason was around $25 million, which I still think that's a little high for us to be giving, especially 10 years. I mean, I don't know about you, Brian, but 10 years from Illich, I don't see that.
With Snell going to LA and Sasaki waiting to January, which kind of bodes well for him as far as his the amount of money that teams will be able to offer. Do you feel that the Blake Snell deal makes any type of impact on where he goes?
I think he's still most likely the front runner for the Dodgers. I mean, the key point too is based on what he has been projected, what he would earn out of that international pool money, the Dodgers still are the only team that can meet that number around $2 million, give or take, maybe $200,000 roughly, because the pool allotment for teams not that big. So $200,000 either way is actually a fairly decent margin of error, if you will. So, there might be, he could go somewhere else for less if he really wanted to. I just, I don't know the guy's financial situation and all that it entails. So, again, but I mean, it would be a 2-year deal. There's no way around that, just because it's going to get to this, year of 25 of age. That way he can go get a max contract.
Right. We still have a lot of big pitchers out there that are awaiting to be signed, like a Jack Flaherty, a Corbin, Max Fried. Max Fried is another guy that was rumored to be heading west. So that kind of creates an interesting scenario there. But I did kind of want to talk about the Tigers. Obviously, you got guys like Pete Alonso, Paul Goldschmidt out there that are still options as far as big bats at the first base position, the first base side of things. But if you had to make a decision on a Teoscar Hernandez or Alex Bregman move, where would you go if you could decide on one, and why?
I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer to be Alex Bregman. I mean, it's if we're doing the most cut and dry and based out of a position of absolute need, it's Alex Bregman at third base. I don't really think between the two there's much of a doubt. I mean, I'm not comparing the two players against each other, simply because, two different positions. I mean, Teoscar Hernandez had a career year last year, winning the Home Run Derby, winning the World Series, had some massive clutch hits in the playoffs, had a very good regular season. That's why he was an all-star. I mean, he's got the momentum for him right now. So the fact that Seattle kind of rolled over and gave up on him, and he walked to LA and had an incredible year, I think it's only going to set himself up for, tremendous amount of success down the road. But we need a corner infield power bat. He plays good defense. Nothing else aside, based on those two parameters between those two players, for me, it's Alex Bregman 10 out of 10 times and 5 times on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just had to look at his age. I didn't realize Teoscar Hernandez was 32 years old. So that's definitely another factor. Well, he just turned 32 in October, but that's certainly another factor considering he's just now having his the best year of his career. So yeah, makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I mean Bregman uh, going and playing for another playoff contender with his ex coach, with his old coach. I mean, it makes sense on so many different levels. And I think in a perfect world, um, Bregman goes to third, Colt Keith goes to first, and Jace Young in his natural position at second base. I think that would be the perfect best case scenario for us. But um, yeah, we'll have to see. And I don't know. Things seem to be heating. I don't. The two biggest rumors that I'm seeing right now is Hernandez to Detroit, but just also recently I saw Bregman being linked to Detroit. So I
Yeah.
think that the fans would be highly pleased with the chance of getting a Bregman. I'm just hoping that he can knock down the years because 10 years, 350 just sounds insane for a guy that um, is 30 years old and, you know, he had a down year last year. He's a couple years removed from the 40, from the 40 home run year. And yeah, couple, a couple years.
Down year, but he killed us in the playoffs. He absolutely killed us.
Was Bregman, did Bregman have a
Yes, that was him. He owned us in that series. He was probably the only player that was consistently tearing the ball off the cover against us.
and that's we obviously know that's where he has flourished in his career, and that's why he does have two World Series championships. So I
I will
would
say
love for
this.
him to
I don't
bring
know
that
if you saw
pedigree.
this. I don't know if you saw this about Nolan Arenado saying that he'd be willing to move to, I think he said first base for a contending team. I think they labeled it new team, but everything around it was screaming contending team. But his first instinct, like Bregman, appears to be he wants to stay. But, looking at the numbers, he struggled last year offensively. Average was down, power numbers were down. He's got to be in his early 30s now. Do we really need another part-time right-handed bat that's struggling with power to go with Torkelson? I mean, it sounds nice because he's been a solid player for most of his career, but it's tough to pass at a guy of that caliber, knowing that he's coming off similar struggles as our everyday first baseman this past year.
Yeah, I mean, historically, it sounds like an ideal situation. But yeah, like you said, we certainly don't need to compound the issue that we're already having at first base. I mean, he had a solid year. I mean, he hit 270, 16 home runs, and 71 RBIs. When you look at the splits, um, he hit 230 against lefties and stronger against righties. So kind of a reverse split to where he could definitely play first against the righties and allow Torque to play against lefties on occasion. Um, but I don't know. He's making a lot of money, isn't he?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I mean, he's still going to command somewhere probably around 20 million, which is crazy. I mean, in my opinion, if we're talking a platoon situation like that, we're trying to play more of a splits positive for each hitter. I'd go back to what the last show we mentioned, and I would love to go get, and it still fits. You go get Josh Bell. He'll play against righties as a left-handed bat. Torque can start against lefties with the right-handed bat, and you can go from there. But the last little, not really update, but let me get your opinion on this. Now that we've had some more movement, there's been some more traction on some of these negotiations for free agency players, unrestricted, that is. Do you think the Tigers are any closer to where we were, we'll say, 2 to 4 weeks ago, in your mind, any closer to having a greater chance at bringing back Jack Flaherty?
I don't know. I mean, when you look at Kikuchi, you look at when you look at the signing of Snell. I don't know. I don't necessarily. Well, I mean, it kind of shuts the door on him going back to LA a little bit. But he's an LA kid. He got to win his World Series, and now he's gonna go get paid. Go get his check. I mean, I think that he's done all he needs to do in LA at this point. Why make it? And he pitched well post deadline as well. So you don't. I don't even think that there's. I can't say there's not much more he could accomplish in LA, but why ruin it there? So yeah. I mean, unless he goes to the Angels, I mean, what other teams? What other teams make sense in that situation? I know the Yankees and Mets plan on spending a lot of money as well, so he could go chase a check there. But I think it would be a great reunification story where the Tigers, rejuvenate his career, send him home, get a ring, get to the playoffs themselves, bolster up their minor league roster, and then he spins the block, comes back and helps us contend for another World Series for the right price. I think it's perfect.
I kind of agree with you. I think the only way that we get passed over in that sense is if Baltimore loses out on Corbin Burns. Now, a lot of reports have him re-signing just because the contract that he was on was a prior extension given to him by the Milwaukee Brewers. So, certain guys that opted out, like the whole Garrett Cole thing was confusing as hell. People are like, well, wait a second. Why'd you opt out if you were going to turn around 24 hours later and re-sign with the Yankees when you had a club option for like $35 million or whatever it was? But, you look at it like, okay, well, he's had another good year. He had a very good year. I mean, the guy just continues to be a top 10 American League pitcher and arguably a top 12 overall pitcher. So he's going to go get his bag, his annual average that he deserves, knowing that, at any given year now that he's, in that range where pitchers traditionally start to naturally decline, barring any injury or anything weird like that. But, I think with the two signings, though, I think his market value now increases a bit. And I think that would be the only other aspect if it gets to the point where teams start driving up the price even further towards, because heading in the offseason, he was projected to be around 22 million. Well, Snell's getting over 35. Granted, he's top tier for a lefty with Fried and guys like Chris Sale right now. However, and then you look at Kikuchi, 21 million a year for a guy that did not produce nearly as much as Flaherty did at all. And I don't know about you. I don't even recall facing him in the playoffs. We played 2 games against the Astros. I don't even think he pitched against us.
Right. I was going to say that. Well, yeah, when you mentioned that because I did know that he got traded to Astros, but no, I don't think I mean, granted, that was a very short series because we kind of made quick work of him, but we just won the first 2 games. So yeah, he didn't even really get an opportunity to play in the playoffs, but yeah.
Yeah, if he gets to like 30 million, somewhere in that range, I mean, if Illich is still willing to put something together, it's going to be, again, another short-term thing. It might be a 2-year deal, 3 at most, because he knows he's got Skubal coming around the corner. So it feels like he's trying to gather as much where he can save to collect. I feel like we're penny pinching like Salvation Army here with this club right now. It's unreal, but we'll see. If he's around 25 million, I think they go for it. But if he gets higher to 30 million, I think he may pass or try to really, really continue to work the phone line with his agency to try and get down a little bit more of a reasonable number that'll still let them operate within the confines of what they're trying to do, which at this point I'm half in the dark about.
Of course. We're going to get to our last break, and then we're going to talk some more about potential free agents and then wrap this bad boy up. So I was looking at some projected post off-season situations, and they, as we continue to speak about pitchers, they talk about a possible trade for Marcus Stroman and a reunion of Justin Verlander back to Detroit to kind of, just get some inning eaters. And obviously, there's a whole storyline and all that about Justin Verlander. But what are your thoughts about those moves? Marcus Stroman is somebody that I actually was looking at last year when he was leaving the Cubs, and he ended up ending the year with New York, where he wasn't even. He had a decent year, but he was left off the playoff roster. He didn't even pitch throughout the entire year. Yeah, he was 10-9 with a 4.31 ERA. So solid, decent year. I know he ate up some innings, but what are your thoughts about going after Marcus Stroman?
I mean, he pitched well when he got to New York. There were some starts I saw of his, just kind of following up because he was a Blue Jay for a long time. Yeah. Was an organizational foundation piece there in the rotation. Struggled and then was even demoted at one point a couple years ago, and then got called back up and had a great last year. And then they just decided change of scenery. Mutual split, parting of ways, if you will, was reached. So I think the big thing with him, though, Mike, the concern is that his velocity is at a steady decline. And that's something that even Chris Fetter can't teach recovery on, is getting your velocity back. So especially at, his juncture in his career in Stroman, he's not 25, 26, 27 coming off of Tommy John surgery. He's been around the block. He's played for now 3 organizations, and really 3 in the last couple of years. So he's now moving around. He is an inning eater, but it's not the type of guy that you would look at and say, okay, we can work with that. I think Maeda was more attractive because he was like a 4-pitch pitcher. So he had more flexibility around his fastball, which we all knew and the league knew for the most part. His fastball was not a go get strike 3 chase pitch. It was just made to keep batters honest because of his lower velocity. So he relies more on his splitter, his off speed and breaking stuff to consistently get guys out. So I don't think he's a guy that they would target unless it comes down to the fact that he becomes so cheap for a 1-year deal that they're like, well, this fits. We'll go ahead and, we'll try it, because the worst case scenario, he's on a 1-year deal. And then Maeda, as previously mentioned, this is his last year on the contract. So now you have 2 of those guys. You just hope, to heaven forbid, that both those guys have a year that Maeda had last year. And now we're kind of in compounding our problem with the rotation. But overall, I think I would pass for now. Maybe wait to see what shakes off heading into through Christmas and New Year, and then reapproach it if he's still available and we still have a need to go get a 5th starter.
Yeah, and I figured that when you kind of talked about guys that don't have high velocity, I thought that you might mention Maeda as well. And Stroman actually has 1 year left on his contract, so he would have to. That would be somebody that we would have to trade for. He signed a 2-year, $37 million contract, so he's due to make $18 million. So when we talk about cheap, that would not be on the cheap side of things. So.
No, it's more than Maeda's making this year. He made 14 last year. He's going to make 10 this year. So for either year, it would be more expensive. Yeah.
And he's not a strikeout guy. He's a ground ball pitcher. He pitches to contact, and they're actually hitting him pretty hard. So I think he might have been the benefit of Run support, obviously, they scored a lot of runs in New York, and he can't lean on that in Detroit at this current juncture. So, what about the reunification of Justin Verlander?
I'm not going to say no. You know what I mean? Like, it's a guy that's brought us to what, 2-3 World Series? And then he's won. He's gone to 2 in his career, if not 3, right?
You said us, but how many? He took the Tigers.
Well, with us, with Detroit.
Okay.
He did in what, 06, and then the 2 in the 2010, 2016 with JD and Prince and those guys. But if he wants to come back for a 1-year deal, I mean, who are we to say no? As long as he's not gonna be like, 1 year, $30 million. No. Sorry. You had a great year last year. This past year you were injury prone. You didn't even make the playoff roster for the Astros. I mean, he would be, in my opinion, kind of even below. I wouldn't say below. I'd say he'd be above Strome if I had to pick between the two. If you needed a fifth guy and those are the two left, and you had to offer one, I'm taking JV. He still has a presence on the mound. Sure, his velocity's down a little bit, but again, he's had plus pitches almost his entire career. Curveball, slider, changeup. He's always been a 4-pitch plus pitcher. So,
yeah, I mean, I was watching an interview with his brother Ben, and that's what kind of made the wheel start spin. But he said, I'm not putting out there anything from from anything I've heard from Justin, but he said that there's an outside shot that he might be considerate, and the fact that when you allow a guy like Justin Verlander to pick the brain of Tarek Skubal or vice versa, I mean, that is just, that's like, I don't even know how to even compare that, but I'm not mad at a situation, especially if JV is willing to give us a reasonable offer. I mean, that dude has made a whole lot of money. I don't think he needs to break the bank with Detroit. So these are all beautiful outcomes that we can talk about, because we know that the Tigers will be contending for a playoff spot again. I think if the Tigers were not good right now, it wouldn't be nearly as appealing for Justin Verlander. But he still wants to win, and the Tigers just knocked out the Astros. So we should just take all the guys that that the Astros don't want to pay. Come on down. If you can't beat them, join them, right?
To the winner go the spoils, right?
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, do we have any league news outside? I know there's some Tampa Bay Rays stuff going on, but anything else that you wanted to touch on before we wrap up?
Yeah, just a couple of other league-wide news here before everyone that does celebrate gears up to go into a nice food coma tomorrow here. As Brian alluded to here, the city of Tampa Bay, that is, must submit their vote by Sunday night before midnight, if they are going to commit to the approved $1.3 billion stadium that was voted for pre-approval in July this summer. Complications from the current damages and repair of Tropicana Field from the prior pair of hurricanes in October that did substantial damage, although the frame and foundation were deemed to be still safe. So they're looking at a multitude of things here. It's just a very tricky situation, considering they're only supposed to play Tropicana for another 2 more years or so, 2 or 3 more years before the new stadium would be ready. So this is creating a big pain in the butt for Major League Baseball, as they will have to, at least this coming year, temporarily play in the New York Yankees Florida spring training facility this coming year for their home games. So there is now a chance that if the team does not vote, I misspoke earlier, not the city, the team must vote by this weekend. there's a chance that if they turn that down, the pre-approval, we may not have baseball in Tampa, St. Pete again, at least in the near future. So now throw that wrench into the mix. So keep an eye come this weekend. But the other two notes were Seattle hiring former longtime Cleveland Guardian manager Manny Acta as the bench coach. Their interim manager, Dan Wilson, who was promoted in season last year due to the in-season firing of Scott Service, was removed the interim tag and promoted to full-time manager. So Manny Acta takes his spot as the bench coach in Seattle, and Baltimore hires as their bench coach former player and recently retired Robinson Chirinos, who I believe was a catcher for a number of years, mostly in the Rangers organization. So that rounds out a couple of coaching staff hires in the American League.
All right, and that should wrap up the show. We wanted to, give you some updates as far as free agency is concerned. The Tigers haven't done a whole lot as of yet, but soon enough we will have a lot to talk about. Please subscribe to Bleachers to Speakers on YouTube and Corner to Copa on all audio aggregators. We have a few player profiles out there, Alex Bregman and Josh Bell. And we also have, and I also have write-ups on Fans First Sports Network on the website as far as player profiles as well. Outside of that, we're just going to wait and see what moves are to be made. Winter meetings are coming up, and then of course we have the deadline as far as arbitration at the top of the year. Any closing thoughts, Coach?
Not much. We usually know it's quiet before the storm, and once more than a few pieces fall, the rest tend to follow. So we'll keep our eyes and ears peeled, and we'll be ready with any breaking information. But, 'tis the season to be thankful, and I am hopefully going to be thankful that we make a couple impactful signings this offseason.
We need that. Yeah, we definitely need that. But yeah, stay tuned, and we will keep everybody posted as things change. Let's get up out of here.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Take it easy.